Hello everyone, welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host Paula Taylor and this is episode 157. Last week's show we did What's the Deal with Past Lives, and I knew I wanted to tell the story for this week's show, didn't realize it was linked or kind of a new series. So this week we're going to talk about what's the deal with ancestral healing. Before we jump into the topic, I just want to remind you, as always, there are a few different ways you can support this show. So you can rate the podcast, like the podcast, share it with a friend. You can also support this work financially. There are show notes with a link to donate. You can also visit paulataylorenergy.com. On the podcast page, there's a link to donate through PayPal to support this work. So when I came up with the topic for today, I didn't actually have a topic, I have a story. It's been a while since we've had a crazy Paula Has a Vision story, and I knew I wanted to share this because it was a really powerful experience. But I was trying to figure out, where's the topic in this? Why am I talking about this? I'm not just sharing this for no reason, what's the purpose of this? And right before I came on, when I was kind of getting ready, I'm in my office today, so I was washing my hands and kind of getting set up. After my last client, getting the camera set up and everything, it was like a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, oh yeah, we are talking about this because we're talking about ancestral healing. And this story I have to share today just illustrates the power of this work so beautifully that I decided what we're doing essentially is a little bit of a series on why are these things important. Healing is so complex. That was actually, I was thinking maybe this is the complexity of healing, because there's so many layers to healing. There's physical healing, which is usually linked to mental and emotional healing. Energetic healing kind of encompasses all of that. But when we're talking about healing, we're dealing with not just things in our own body that have happened to us in this lifetime. Last week we talked about past lives and how that work can be important for your current life in terms of healing. But there's also what I called last week, reclaiming the quantum body is what I'm calling it. That will be another show, maybe next time. Not sure exactly when, but that's part of this series. But there is ancestral healing. So let's define that. I want to jump into my story, but I want to give you a little bit of an understanding, what do I mean? What does ancestral healing mean? So ancestral healing is essentially healing any part of your physical lineage. So parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, I saw a chart and I can't remember the numbers at all, but there is a huge amount of ancestors that we have that led to us coming into this body at this time. And so for ancestral lineage, we're talking about the actual physical lineage that's handed down to you through your blood relatives, through your parents, through your grandparents, etc. Now, I also sometimes talk about energetic ancestral lineage. So you have a physical lineage, but you have an energetic lineage as well. So if you have I know that I was a healer in other lifetimes. Those healers, some of them are past lives, some of them are part of this energetic lineage. If you're somebody who did not know your biological parents, you still have a physical ancestral lineage, but you have an energetic lineage of kind of the environment you were raised in and sort of taking those patterns on. So ancestral healing kind of includes both of those things. I'm going to limit, my story is about my physical ancestral lineage, but just understand that ancestral lineage is essentially other people who have come before us. So past lives is other lives we have lived. Our soul has occupied other bodies, and there's an energetic lineage there. Ancestral healing or ancestral lineage is the physical lineage of your ancestors, your physical ancestors, as well as an energetic lineage of other people you were connected to. So not people whose lives you lived, but a lot of times with past life work, we encounter relatives from our current life in past lives in different forms. So maybe in one life, your mother was really your sister in that life, but now in this life, she's your mother. And then in another life, maybe she's your daughter. We do tend to kind of travel together with other souls until we've completed the karmic contracts we've made with each other to learn, to grow, whatever the reason is that we've chosen to kind of come together. A lot of those things, we choose our family of origin, which sometimes is hard, especially when you're doing trauma work. It's like, why did I choose this? But there was something about that is serving you in this life. Your soul is being served by living in the family that you're in this life. And again, not necessarily just physically, because some of us don't live with our biological families, but there's an energetic family here. If you were adopted for a reason by a certain family. So that's essentially that's my definition of ancestral healing or ancestral lineage. So I'm not going to go too far down the topic of why this is important. I think the story I'm going to share really illustrates that. And a lot of this is similar to what we talked about in last week's episode, which is what's the deal with past lives. So go back and listen to that. We talked about the importance of this type of healing. And essentially, we are complex beings and we are carrying multiple layers of energy, of frequency, of vibration in our physical, emotional, mental, energetic bodies. So the things that happened to you in this lifetime, trauma things that happened in this lifetime especially, but also the trauma that happened to your ancestors, whether it's your parents, your grandparents, I mean, we can go back generations, that all comes through and is held in your body somewhere. It's held in the energy of your body. It's held in your emotional field. It's held in your mental field. That's why people tend to pass down beliefs. And some of that, we could get into like a nature versus nurture argument, how much of this is born and how much of this is created environmentally. It doesn't really matter because it's in us. And it's something that we need to address if we're going to continue excavating, if we're going to continue bringing clarity, expansion, harmony, oneness, wholeness, healing to ourselves. We need to address some of these things that are still held in our energetic bodies, whether it's the physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy. So the reason that we do ancestral healing is the same reason we do any other type of healing, is because as we release these old frequencies, it frees us up. It frees us up to have more space in our energetic field. It frees us up to have more joy in our lives. It frees us up sometimes from generations of physical illness that we've carried. And all of this comes in this story I'm going to tell. So I don't want to get too far down. Go back and listen to last week's show. It was a fun show. This is a little bit of a fun series we're doing here. And also a little bit of explanatory about this intuitive reading that I do and why do I do it? Because it furthers us along the path of healing. So let me see if I can get through this story. I was a little bit nervous before the show, and that usually happens to me when I know I'm talking about something that's a little bit difficult and a little bit emotional, but it feels important to share. So let me see if I can get through this in a way that makes sense and kind of explain what happened. There's a little bit of a backstory to this. I don't think we need to go into. It'll come up as I tell the story if we need. So last week I did a somatic breathwork experience with my friend and mentor, Liz Zamorsky, who I've mentioned a few times. You can find her at FemGenius on social media. She's amazing. She teaches tarot reading, and that's kind of where I started with her, but she's also now certified in this somatic breathwork work. And I've never done that before. I've done a lot of breath work in my life, but it's always been sort of in service to something else. Breath work is part of yoga, breath work is part of meditation, breath work is part of qigong. And this is breath work specifically designed for somatic release, which is right up my alley. So it's a little surprising that I've never done it until now. But I had the opportunity to attend this class via Zoom, and I had no idea what to expect. I always go into things just kind of ready to see what happens. And I had the most powerful experience and just such a powerful I almost hesitate to call it a vision because it was so physically palpable. It was really like I was in another place. And yeah, I'm going to stop there and just get into the story. I can tell sometimes I stall a little bit about this. So we started this breath work, and it's kind of a prescribed way of breathing. She was playing a specific, I think she intentionally picks music for these journeys, and I happened to be in the perfect one. She was playing some kind of late 70s folk rock. And I will also mention that March 26th was the 7th anniversary of my dad's dying. So he's been on my mind. He's been close. I've been having grief come up. It comes up every year. I mean, it comes up all the time, but especially around the anniversaries and birthdays are hard. So it didn't surprise me that he kind of came into this, but the music that she was playing was very much the type of music that I heard in my house growing up. And so the first couple songs, I was just kind of settling in and figuring out this breathing pattern and kind of feeling how it was going in my body, essentially getting settled in. And then she played Danny's Song by Kenny Loggins. And I grew up listening to the Anne Murray version of that song. My dad really loved Anne Murray. And right away I was like, oh man. First I smiled really big because it made me think of him, and I just was like, I just felt really joyful. But then the grief came up. And so there was like grief in traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, grief is lungs. So I could really feel like a lot of stuff coming up, and she had explained beforehand, you might cry, you might laugh, it's all welcome. Just kind of go with it. Try to keep the breathing up as much as you can, this pattern of breathing. So I was crying and I was releasing some grief, and I could feel it pretty much through that whole song. I was just releasing grief and it was moving through. But then all of a sudden, she had encouraged us to lie down for this. So I was actually lying in my bed, and I could feel him lying in bed next to me. And when I say that, I mean, like, physically, he was in bed next to me. Like, at one point, I sort of had my hands on my chest because I was trying to facilitate some of this grief that was moving. And I wanted to reach out and grab his hand, like hold his hand, because he was so present that it felt like he was physically lying next to me. And he actually told me, he said, no, you don't need to do that. Keep your hands where they are. This is important. Like, you're moving energy. And I'm right here. You don't need to reach out and feel me. I'm right here. So at first we were just kind of lying there, and I was releasing my grief, and he started showing me pictures, and it was like a movie montage. And of course there's music playing. So, a movie montage, you've got this song playing, and then it's usually like a series of pictures, right? And the purpose of a montage in a movie is to kind of move the story forward, to like give you a sense of the kind of jokey traditional one is like, I'm going to get a new wardrobe and I'm trying on new clothes. So you see me try on all these clothes, and we play a fun song in the background. And then instead of like doing it in real time, in a minute and a half or something, I've got my new outfit, or I'm training and I'm going to become a boxer. And so there's the Sylvester Stallone and Eye of the Tiger, and he's running in the training. So that's kind of what a montage is. And this is a little bit how a lot of this came through to me, but it was interesting. It was very visual, and I'm not usually a visual person. And it wasn't exactly like I was seeing it behind my eyes. Like I still had my eyes closed and it was kind of dark, but it was so real that it was like I was transported to another place. Just like it was so real that my dad was lying next to me in the bed. Like, I felt like if I reached out and grabbed his hand, he would physically be there. It was really intense. It was very powerful. So the first thing he showed me, let's see if I can get through this part, was him holding me as a baby. And I knew he did this with my sisters. We have pictures. So he always kind of had a beer gut, and I have twin sisters. And so he would have a baby on each side of his belly, and that would calm them down. We used to joke about that was like the only thing that would calm them down, was like laying on daddy's belly. And so he showed me a picture of me doing that. And the feeling that came through was just pure unconditional love. And it was very clear to me that he wanted me to know how much he loved me. And he started showing me these images of these times that we had together, like him and me, and just how much joy it brought him in his life. Like, he really wanted me to know how much he loved me and how precious the memories we had together were. But then it evolved into something just completely different from anything that's ever happened to me. So bear with me as I try to get through this verbally. So it started out with these pictures, and I could feel the love, and I could feel him communicating to me, like, you know, how much he loved me. But then it moved into this sort of him showing me, mostly through pictures, and then we ended up in a full-on conversation. I'll get to that. But he was showing me pictures of how difficult things were for him. And it was kind of like he wanted me to understand why that pure feeling of love that he really had for me didn't always come through. Like, what were the things that got in the way of him being able to express what he really felt in the moment when I was, you know, when we were alive together? Why couldn't he express these things? And it was so interesting because he was showing me, again, it was kind of like a montage, and the songs were sort of changing in the background, but he was showing me a montage of his own life. And it was interesting because I was receiving information like through these pictures that were, it's hard to describe, because I was receiving volumes of information just by like seeing a picture, and then he would like show me another picture, and then he would show me another picture. It was really, again, I've never had anything quite like that happen to me. So essentially what he was showing me was that he was an empath, like I am. I'm not a huge fan of that word, but it conveys the purpose of the message. I kind of prefer sensitive. He was somebody who took on other people's emotions. That's essentially what an empath is. He was someone who was sensitive. And a lot of us have sensitivities to other things. I've talked a lot about my really sensitive hearing. I have a sensitive sense of smell. These things tend to go hand in hand. But he was talking specifically about his sensitivity to emotions, about picking up other people's emotions. And what happens if you're an empath who doesn't realize they're an empath? First of all, you're like a sponge. You're going around soaking up the emotions of the people around you, and not recognizing that they're not your emotions. And essentially you kind of become a container for other people's emotions. And so people who aren't comfortable containing their own emotions, who can't deal with their own emotions, unconsciously will push those emotions onto an empath. And that's why a lot of times, like, empaths and narcissists sort of end up together. Not always, but this idea of a narcissist is somebody who can't really, there's not a lot of empathy there, and they can't feel other people's emotions, and they can't put themselves in other people's places. They can't handle their own emotions, essentially. I mean, there's a lot of baggage about even the word narcissist, but so somebody who can't handle their emotions a lot of times ends up kind of paired up with somebody who's a container for emotions, and they can kind of push their emotions onto that person. So what my dad was showing me was he had a lot of anger. He had a lot of rage. And I was really afraid of him for most of my childhood because he was just angry all the time. He yelled a lot. He just was a very scary kind of person to me. And we got into a full conversation because one of the moments of joy he showed me was he loved to ride his motorcycle. And so I had a little helmet and I would ride around with him. And there was a point around age 7 or 8 where I suddenly was afraid and I didn't want to ride on the back of the motorcycle anymore. And he was very angry about it at the time. And I remember he kept coming to pick me up from like soccer practice or whatever on the motorcycle, even though I didn't want to be on the motorcycle. And it was really unpleasant for me. And I went to my mom and I was like, can you please just tell him I don't want to ride on the motorcycle. I don't feel safe. I don't like it. And it was like to the point where I was crying and stuff. I really didn't like it. And I knew he was mad about it at the time. And so we had this long conversation where he was like, I don't understand what happened. And that was one of my moments of joy with you that I just enjoyed so much. And then all of a sudden you didn't want to do it anymore. And so I had to tell him, like, Dad, that's around the age when I figured out that you drank and that there were different versions of you. And so I didn't feel safe because I didn't know who was coming to pick me up. And he used to drive us in the car when he was drunk, and he would swerve, and I sat behind him, and I have a lot of trauma about that. And so the idea of being on a motorcycle, which is much more exposed, and sometimes he fell. We lived in a neighborhood there was a lot of gravel around. We didn't have sidewalks and stuff. And I reached this age where I realized that this wasn't necessarily the safest form of transportation, and I didn't trust him because I didn't know who I was going to encounter, because he was like different people. He was this really angry person, or he was this really loving person, or he was this drunk person that made me uncomfortable. So that was expressed by me not wanting to ride on the motorcycle. So we actually had a long conversation where he was like, I never understood what happened. And I had to tell him, like, this is what happened. And then he was apologizing. And, I never wanted you to feel that way. I didn't understand how scared you were. And so he started showing me where all of his rage and anger came from, because he said, this wasn't even my anger. Some of it was, of course, but he was soaking this anger up from people around him, just people he encountered, people at work, other people in our house who were maybe angry. There was that component. But the hugest part of this was that he had been passed down this intense anger and rage from his mother's side of his family. And he had no choice but to take this on. He felt like a container for this anger, this rage. And he didn't know it wasn't his. Maybe until this moment, we had this healing session together, essentially. Maybe this was his first realization after passing out of this life, that all of this anger and rage that he felt, that came so strongly in through his family, was not even his. It came from this ancestor, and we'll get into that whole story because that's really intense and powerful. But he wanted me to understand that he didn't know it wasn't his. It felt like his, and also he felt powerless to change things. So the next thing that he expressed to me was that he said, I'm so proud of you for doing this work that I wasn't able to do. I want you to release this. I don't want you to carry this. It wasn't fair that I had to carry this. And you have the power to release this rage, to release this lineage, ancestral lineage of rage and anger that has been passed down multiple generations in our family. And the other thing he showed me was that a lot of the physical illness that came down from that side of the family was linked to this rage, because the rage has to have somewhere to go. If you're not able to release it, you're not able to express it, to process it, to release it, you're not even aware it's there, it's held in the body. Emotions are held in the body. So the heart disease that was rampant in that side of the family, the atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease. He had to have his carotid arteries cleaned out. So kind of this gathering, this plaque in the arteries, this inflammation, which inflammation is heat. It goes hand in hand with anger. All of this, he was like, if you can release all of this, you can release that from your body, and it's not yours. So you don't need to carry this anymore. I carried it through my whole life, not knowing I had a choice. You have a choice. I want you to release it. I want you to do the work that I wasn't able to do for myself when I was alive. And it was, again, really intense. So we started to explore, so that alone is ancestral lineage, dealing with just one level removed, your parents' stuff that gets passed down to you. But where did their stuff come from? Most of the time it got passed down to them. That's one of the reasons I talk about how blame in trauma doesn't really do much for us, because we were traumatized by somebody who was traumatized, by somebody who was traumatized, by somebody who was traumatized, and so on back generations. And absolutely, do you have responsibility for your own actions? Absolutely. But that's what this experience with my dad was him showing me the complexity of this. and like how much he loved me and how hard he was trying and how he was buried under this rage that wasn't even his, that had just been passed down to him. And he also apologized, again, because we do have personal responsibility. And he said, I was not able to do this work when I was alive. I didn't have the capacity to do this, the awareness to do it, the courage to do it, the vulnerability to do it, whatever it is. But what he said to me is, you do. And I want you to know how proud I am of you for doing that. And when we do this ancestral work, I'm going to get into the rest of this story, we get so much love and appreciation and gratitude from those ancestors, from those people who came before us. We're doing the work for us and our future generations, absolutely, but we're also doing the work for them. And the freedom that can open up when you clear a line of ancestral energy is immense. It's just so powerful. So we decided, I knew where this rage came from, and this is where there's a little bit of a backstory that I'll get into here because it comes up as part of this story. So a few months ago, I had this vision of this ancestor a few generations back, and she was a young woman, like a late teenage, 18, 19. And it's so funny. I was talking to my friend after this, and I was like, man, the damage that this angsty teenager did to my whole family line is just crazy, because it feels like such a waste. There's a lot of pettiness in this anger. So and I have no idea if this is true, other than I looked on a map and I can see this forest right where I thought it would be on this map of Poland. But I don't really know almost anything about this side of my family. But a few months ago, I got this information that this side of my family lived in Poland, which I knew, but that essentially they were gypsies is the word. I might have mentioned this on the show because I remember being like, I don't think we're supposed to use that word, but that is the word they gave to me. And that they were psychics, essentially, that traveled around and went from town to town in a wagon. I saw wagons. That's how long ago this was. And, they would park their caravan kind of in a circle, and they would do readings for the town, and they did herbal healings, and they were very connected to this earth, this area, this forest that I kept seeing in my mind on this map, sort of like west of Gdansk in Poland. And I finally pulled up a map, and right where I thought there was a forest, there's a big forest that's now kind of like I don't know what they would call it, a national park or something. And I thought, someday I'm going to get here because I can feel the energy. So they were super connected to the earth. They were using that earth energy. They were healers, but they were also really looked down on. They were shunned. If you know anything about people who traveled like that, they were thought to be, there were all these horrible stereotypes. They were thieves. They were dirty. There was like a lot of just mistrust around people who were outsiders in general. But then they traveled in really closely knit groups and close knit families, which is so funny because my dad's family carried that on, like this idea of not trusting people outside the family and not having friends outside the family, and your family is everything. That's kind of this idea of, everything is within this family, this really close-knit group. And they did a lot of good for people, but they also embraced the theatrics of it a little bit. I kept seeing this sort of grandmother figure, like just such a, like a stereotypical, and in my mind, she looked a little bit like in Snow White when the Wicked Witch disguises herself as an old lady and like gives Snow White an apple. She looked a little bit like that woman, but like with a long cape on and like scarves and like a crystal ball, really kind of like embracing the mystique of this, psychic persona and doing readings for people, but actually really doing really lovely, powerful earth energy based healing. And so this angsty teenager decided that this happens a lot, it's like a natural part of being a teenager, is that you start to grow disdainful of your parents and what they do and the way they've raised you. It's part of that rebellion of like, going out on your own. And she was like, times were changing and like this old world stuff is so stupid. And it was she had a lot of judgment about, she didn't want to be an outsider. She wanted to fit in. She didn't want to be stuck with the family. She didn't want this magic or whatever word they used for it. And so she shunned it all and she came to America. And she cut herself off from the land. So I knew all this. This had all come through in a previous vision that I had. But the other thing that came through this time that was so interesting, so she had all this rage. And again, it was so, and not to discount what we feel as teenagers at all, because it's very real. But there's this angsty quality of, again, this rebellion and trying to find out who you are. And sort of just being angry for the sake of being angry and being a little bit petty about it, being overly concerned with like whether things are fair and whether you fit in and wanting to be the popular kid. This was the kind of like feeling that came through. And so when she cut herself off so completely, these were powerful women. It was passed down especially powerfully through the women, although the men definitely had the empath part of it, the sensitivity part of it. She essentially cast a spell that blocked everybody forward, everyone from her on in that lineage, from accessing this earth connection, this earth magic, this beautiful support of this land that they had relied on for a long time, for generations, to kind of draw from, to perform these kind of acts of magic, for lack of a better word. So there was rage. In a rage, she cut herself off from that. She cut the rest of her lineage off from that. Probably not intentionally. It was just such a powerful intention that it came all the way down. But then when she got to America, she missed that. She missed her family. She missed the way of life, whether she could admit it to herself or not. So then she had rage about that. It was kind of like, and it's so funny because we used to joke about my dad, and he would there's that old phrase, you cut off your nose to spite your face. So like, I'm going to hurt myself out of spite for you. And that's exactly what this energy was. I don't want to be around you anymore. I'm cutting myself off from you. But then that really hurt her in the long run because she cut off her root connection to the earth, which is something I have struggled with my entire life, which I now understand why it's been so difficult for me, because I was cut off from my land. And so I had reopened my connection to this land and worked with it for a while. But what came through in this session with my dad was like all of this rage that came down all came from this one person. It was so funny. I could see her. I could see like kind of the family tree. And she was just this black cloud of anger that was just oozing down the line and probably back up the line as well, oozing out into the rest of her family. So I found her, and all of a sudden the grandmother showed up as soon as I moved her out of the way. So I have a healing cave. We've gone there before on our planet, in our healing sanctuary, in our energetic sanctuary. And I put this person in the healing cave, and she was like kicking and screaming and like basically just having a tantrum. And what are you doing to me? And I was like, you do not get to infect my family with rage anymore. This is your rage. You do not get to give it to us. You need to deal with it. And I like shoved her into the healing cave. And when I turned around, this grandmother was standing right in front of me. Again, it was such a physical experience. It felt like I was actually there. Like she took my hands in hers and she looked straight into my eyes, and with so much love and feeling, she said to me, I've been waiting to see you. I wasn't able to see you because of all of this rage that was in the way, and I can finally see you, and I just want to look at you. And there was so much love coming from her. And so we just stood there for a minute, like looking at each other. And I could feel this expansion. I could feel the rage gone from this line. I could feel that connection back to that beautiful forest earth in Poland. And then I was like, well, what do we do with the angry teenager over there? Like, she was in the cave, you know, screaming and kicking and just throwing things around and just having an all out fit. I said, we need to help her. I can't just like shove her in there and leave her there. And she said to me, I'll go in with her. I want you to spend some time with your dad, like finish this experience with your dad, which was just so loving and supportive. So much of my life, I have felt like I was doing this work all alone. So to have her look at me that way and hold my hands like that, it was like, this is the grandmother figure that I had been needing in this, yes, in my physical lineage, but in my energetic lineage, understanding why I'm so sensitive and why I'm an empath and who, is this my feeling? Is this someone else's feeling? Like if I had had this connection to her as a child, if it hadn't been blocked by this rage, I would have felt so much more loved and supported in that area of my life growing up. So we had a moment there of just filling that space with that sense of just me being supported and treasured and loved for this work that I'm doing, not in spite of it, which is sometimes how it feels. So she said, I'm going to go off. So angsty teenager, I don't have a name for her, so I'm just calling her angsty teenager. Still in the cave. She's winding herself down a little bit. Like we've been waiting for her to tire herself out, essentially, so that we can go in and try to get her to have some awareness and release this for herself. So all of her own rage is in the cave with her now, which I'm sure is extremely uncomfortable, but needs to happen for her to move on and for the rest of the family to move on. So that was Saturday. Today's Thursday. She's still in there. She's a little like, she's starting to tire out. So I think by this weekend, I may be able to go in and kind of work with her. And grandma has been going in and out, kind of keeping an eye on her, keeping her safe, coming back to me just to like make her presence known. So it was such a life-changing experience. I hope I did a decent job of verbalizing that. And I finished that session. This was like a 35-minute breathwork session, by the way. It was like a whole lifetime of stuff. It's one of the reasons I love this kind of work is that like when we can open this portal and it's like time slows down and we get all of this stuff done in such a short amount of time. So I finished it out with my dad just looking at these moments of joy. And essentially he said to me, my life was hard and it was complicated and I was weighed down by this rage. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand my sensitivity. I didn't know that I was taking on other people's emotions. I didn't know. On some level, I think he knew that he was sensitive. He didn't know what to do about it. He didn't have tools to deal with it. And he didn't have the capacity to explore that in the way that I have. But he really wanted me to know how much joy I brought to his life and my sisters, but this was me and him. So he was showing me moments with me and him. And again, it went back to this beautiful montage of images of him with me. And I could feel, that's one of the good things about being an empath. I'm crying, but I could feel that joy in my own body. And I knew how much he loved me. Despite the complexity, despite the fact that he maybe didn't have the words to express it, despite the anger that got in the way of that, we finished the session out together just looking at these moments of pure love and joy between us. And since then, somebody asked me today, is today your birthday? And I was like, no, but there's a rebirth that's happened. This rage is gone. It's gone from my body. It was kind of really stored deep in my body because I'm not real comfortable with that. And I've done a lot of release work, so I think I was able to move some of it through. but it's gone. I felt it come out of my sisters. I felt it come out of the people before me. I felt it was like a weight had been lifted. And I went the next day and I got an acupuncture session. It was like the completion of this, like the weight just being lifted and having so much more space. Completely life-changing, to the point that somebody asked me if it was my birthday. A rebirth of my energy, of the energy of my family, of the people who have come before me. So much gratitude, a reconnection to this however many greats grandmother, and the opportunity for angsty teenager to heal when she's ready without hurting anyone else. This is the power of ancestral healing work. And a lot of times we get to a point in our healing journey where we feel stuck. We've worked with a lot of our own memories. We've worked with a lot of our own trauma. We've excavated the first few layers of our archaeological dig, and what is underneath those layers is this deeper work, ancestral lineage work, past life work, quantum body work, which we will maybe go into next time. And we've got to get to a place to be ready for this sometimes, but it is life-changing work. If you can release a long-standing pattern that has been in your family for generations, you free not just yourself, not just the people who came before you, but everyone else in that lineage, the people who are still alive, who share any portion of that bloodline or energetic lineage, the people who come after you. So I don't have children, but somewhere I've got distant cousins and they probably have children. This work ripples out. And if you want to talk about karma and an understanding of karma, what you give out comes back to you threefold. That's a really common phrase kind of in the Wiccan community. When you heal something this big, you receive that healing threefold. It's why someone asked me if it was my birthday, if I was born again, because it feels a little bit that way. That is the strength and power of this work. Whew. So, I have no plans for today's meditation. I'm just checking in to see. We've done ancestral healing. Way back at the very beginning, I was like in the first 10 shows, there's an ancestral healing meditation that we did. And I think we'll do, they're never the same, but I think we'll do something similar. Just like what we did last week. We're going to open the door gently to see if there's any ancestral healing information that might be useful for us to know. But just like I did last week, I just want to kind of state a little disclaimer here. This is work that you will most likely need help with. I do this work for a living. I facilitate this work for other people. And all of these visions that I've had about this ancestral healing have been when I was in with another practitioner, when I was receiving from another practitioner. So just know that this is work that you cannot do alone. You will need help with this work. 100%. I was going to hedge a little bit. Nope, you will need help. Sometimes that help comes in spiritual form, like this grandmother figure that showed up. But most of the time, just like for past life work, this is really deep work. We're getting into traumas that have been held for generations, and you will 100% need some guidance with this. So we're going to open the door a little bit, kind of dip our toe in. We do that a lot with trauma work because it's a way to open the door and just have a little taste of this, and then decide if you want to pursue it at some point. Maybe not now, maybe later, maybe in 5 years you'll be like, oh man, that ancestral thing is really coming into my mind, or maybe in a few months. And just like I said last week, when you're working with someone with this type of work, it's imperative that you feel safe. It's imperative that you feel resonant with them. And it's appropriate to ask questions in order to identify how you're feeling so that you know that you're safe, so that you know that you're protected, so that you know this work is being done with honor, ethically, and for the highest good. So let's meditate together. For this meditation, find a comfortable position. Doesn't matter if you're sitting down, if you're lying down, just get really comfortable. You might decide you want to drift off to sleep, so make sure you're in a safe space to do that. It's lovely to have some part of your body contacting the earth, whether it's your feet or your bottom, lying down on the ground. If that's not accessible and you're lying in a bed or on a couch, just imagine that you're lying on the ground. And let's start with that connection to the ground. We're going to take 3 to 5 deep oxytocin breaths, but while you're doing these breaths with me, bring your awareness to that part of your body that's touching the ground or closest to the ground. And then we're going to inhale deeply into the nose, letting the belly really float out. We're going to sigh that breath out with an audible ha sound, just letting the body know that it's safe to do this work. Focusing on that area of your body that's touching or closest to the ground. Let's do those 3 deep oxytocin breaths. I'll do one with you. Do that at least 2 to 3 to 5 more times. And as you breathe in, imagine that beautiful earth energy coming up through this body part that's close to or touching the ground. And as you sigh the breath out, just let go of any energy that's not serving you. Anything you're ready to release, just send it down into the earth to be recycled for the highest good. And then again, as you breathe in, drawing this beautiful, supportive, loving earth energy up through the body. And then sighing that breath out, letting that energy flow back down, taking with it anything you're ready to let go of. You can do that a few more times if it feels good. You can release the audible ha sound. Anytime you feel like you need to release, it's a great idea to breathe out with your mouth open. Add a little bit of a sigh. That really facilitates the movement of that energy. So now that we're a little more settled in our body, we're going to allow that crown chakra at the top of the head to open. We're going to invite in that beautiful golden light, that unconditional love that is the source of our being. Just inviting that in through the top of the head, down through the neck and the throat, out the shoulders into the upper arms, through the elbows and the forearms, into the wrists and hands. Letting this beautiful love and light flow down into the chest and upper back, into the belly and mid-back, low belly, into the tailbone, into the pelvis. And right here, just pause for a moment and notice that maybe there's a meeting of these two energies, this beautiful earth energy we've called up, this beautiful source energy that we're bringing in. And as you breathe out, the next time you breathe out, just let that light flow down your thighs. You might even bring your hands along your thighs to facilitate that movement. Taking another breath in, letting that beautiful light flow out as you breathe out through the knees, through the lower legs, down through the ankles and feet, and then into the earth. So we've got this beautiful circuit of light energy coming in the head, down into the earth, and then this beautiful earth energy coming up into the body, up all the way in to the top of the head. So there's a fountain of energy kind of coming up and out, and then there's this beautiful energy as well coming in from that source through the top of the head, down through the body. Just feeling that flow for a moment. whenever we connect to intuitive information, we want to be really present in our body. So maybe take a moment, put your hands on your belly, or one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Just take a few breaths into the belly, into the chest. Just really getting present in your body as much as you can in this moment. And then as you're ready, we'll just invite that crown space to open a little more. We're setting the intention that any intuitive information that comes in today is for our highest good, to facilitate our growth, to facilitate our healing, to bring more love and light into not just our systems, but into our family lineage, whether that's blood lineage, whether that's energetic lineage. Just creating a really beautiful container here of intention for the highest good as we work with this family lineage energy. So we're going to ask some questions, tapping into this ancestral lineage. Just know that sometimes no information comes through, and that's okay. It just may not be the day for this. You can absolutely repeat this. And we're also setting the intention here that we're just gently opening the door for a little bit of information to flow through. There's no need to go any deeper than this in this particular meditation. We can always pursue that more later. We're just asking some gentle questions, inviting some gentle information through. So as you get settled here, we're just going to ask some questions, connecting to this intuitive flow of information. Is there information about my ancestral lineage that could be helpful to the healing of me and my family? Is there ancestral lineage information that could be helpful for the healing of both myself and my family? That's our first question. Just see if anything comes in. There's no pressure around this. Again, sometimes today is just not the day for this. It doesn't mean that the information isn't there or accessible to you. Just drawing in, just asking, is there any information about my ancestral lineage that will serve me in my healing? And the next place to go here, if you're getting a yes, and if you're not, just stay in this flow, take some deep breaths, just let this information kind of come into your system, and you can always come back to this. Our next question, whenever we're working with ancestral lineage, is where does this information come from? What side of my family is this coming from? Is this coming from my mother's side? Is this coming from my father's side? Is this coming from an energetic lineage that's not linked to my bloodline, to my biological lineage? Just see if any information comes in there. And then from there, we're going to ask, what information about this situation might it be helpful for me to know right now? Just inviting a little bit of that information in. What information might it be helpful for me to know about this situation right now? And again, if nothing comes in, that's okay. It's just not the moment for it. And it may be that you need help with this as well, and that's completely fine. So just opening the door for a little bit of that intuitive connection. And the last thing, before we step into some sound, is there an ancestor who'd like to join me for the last part of this meditation. For the highest good, always for the highest good. Maybe there's somebody who wants to show up and make their presence known. Maybe they don't even have any information to give you. They just want to show you love. They just want to show appreciation. They just want to look into your eyes and let you know that you are loved. So just open that invitation to someone to step in. It could be a parent, a grandparent, it could be somebody generations back. And again, could be physical bloodline, could be energetic lineage. There's no distinction here. If it serves you, we allow it into the space. So last time, is there an ancestor, or maybe more than one, who'd like to join me as we step into sound? And just allow yourself to be receptive here. Just be. Let go of any expectations about what should be happening. Let go of any expectations about whether you should be getting information. And just be in this space. And know that if you don't feel an ancestor, there's no specific energy here. You've invited the energy of your lineage to come in, and just allow yourself to receive that. Just this sense of appreciation of those who've come before you, just for existing. There's something you need to do to prove your worth to them. Allowing yourself to be in this state of receptivity for just a few more moments, receiving love, gratitude from these ancestors we've invited into this space, receiving any last bits of information that serve you for the highest good, knowing again you can come back to this space. If you've met someone special, come back and visit with them again. If you've identified some emotion, some energy that needs clearing, just know that there's no rush here. You can come back to this when you're ready. Reach out for help with that clearing if you feel like you need it. Giving some gratitude now as we prepare to release these ancestors we've called in. Give them some gratitude, give them some love. They are here supporting you way more often than you realize. They are rooting for you to succeed. As you succeed, they succeed. As you heal, they heal. Your healing ripples out to them, and they appreciate you for that. They have gratitude for that. So send some of that gratitude back to them. Know that they did the best they could with the tools they had, with the capacity they had, and that they are 100% supporting any healing work that you do now in your lifetime, even if they were not able to do it. That they are proud of you for that. that they are proud of you just for being you. They don't have expectations like you might have felt if you were alive with them. They're just here with love, wishing you well. As you're ready, allow your crown chakra to gently close. We do want to close it at least somewhat. You can leave a little bit open for the highest good. You might close it all the way. Leave that up to you. But we do want to close that space down. We can always come back and reopen it when we want more intuitive information. And once more, just grounding yourself back down, allowing your energy to come through the head, through the neck, through the torso, down into the hips, through the legs, all the way down to the earth. And once again, checking in with that part of your body that's closest to or touching the ground. Really feel that, maybe move that area a little bit, just to remind yourself that you are here present in your body. Take 2 or 3 more deep oxytocin breaths, allowing that audible ha sound to reconnect you with the ground, to bring you back into your conscious mind. Slowly moving your body, coming back to the rest of your day or evening. If you're in a safe space and you'd like to drift off to sleep, you can allow yourself to do that. Sat Nam. The truth of your identity is that you are a vast being of incredible intuitive potential. Allow yourself to tap into that intuition when it serves your highest good. Take 1 more deep breath, and as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, this is a fairly complex subject that you might want to return to. You might want to return to this meditation or reach out for help. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening. Have a luminous rest of your week, and I will see you for next week's episode of Wind Down Wednesdays.